We're taking a look at HoldSport now, and in its maiden set of interim results since listing in July 2011, HoldSport reported a 7.2% increase in sales to 546.9 million rand. The sports, leisure and recreational goods retailer was pleased with strong cash flow from operating activities. Core headline earnings per share increased 22.3% to 159.2 cents. HoldSport declared a maiden interim dividend of 47 cents per share.
HoldSport market cap of 1.4 billion. Price earnings 11.3, dividend yield 1.5, not completely fair because that's only a 6-month. We assume they will give us a year end and that might push it up to 3.5, maybe even 4. Gerbrand, let's start with you. A niche player in the retail space. They're not like a fashion, they just do sport. They do Sportsman's Warehouse, Outdoor Warehouse. They've stayed static in terms of number of stores for a couple of years, added 2. Let's get the sense that they were drifting a bit and now they need to kind of get things going and happening, and we can see some of that in terms of inventories, working capital and the like.
Certainly looks that way. Luckily they opened one in my hometown, Van der Belt Park, last year, so I think that was
So you're a sportsman.
That was the last one that they opened. I think they want to open, if you look at their strategic view and the analyst presentation, I think 3 or 4 stores a year going forward for the next 4 or 5 years. I just think it's a very difficult market. It's maybe a bit of not middle class, but just above middle class people spending money there, etc. So if you're going into a difficult period in the economy, you're probably going to be more price sensitive and shop somewhere else, which makes it a very difficult investment case. But if you look at the earnings that they brought out, R1.60 per share, if they can repeat that, that's about the P of 10, and if they give a bit of a better dividend, you're sitting at a 4% dividend. It doesn't look too expensive, although I think that's probably the right price for this type of company.
They're not cheap either, what you say.
Oliver, what are the chances that they are going to repeat this performance? I mean, the first 6 months look very impressive, good numbers out, but they mentioned that a lot of what's going to happen depends on Christmas trade. Unemployment figures being what they are in South Africa, chances are maybe they may not have such a good season.
Yeah, definitely. I think, if you do get a slowdown, possibly they will be adversely affected. I think if the Springboks win the World Cup, they'll also do
a whole lot more jerseys.
Yeah, a whole lot more jerseys. Like Simon says, you can't argue with the numbers. They look fairly good. But yeah, going forward it's going to be interesting. I know Mr. Price Sport, is obviously their big competitor. But yeah, it looks good. But just going forward, if we have a proper slowdown like everyone's anticipating, these guys could come under some pressure. And
they're going to get Massmart. I mean, you mentioned Mr. Price. Massmart's going to play in this space. And Gerbrand, one of the things which we mentioned earlier in the week in the show, South African retailers are amongst the best in the world. Look at companies like Vashini Group, Woolies, Shoprite, and Pick n Pay's lost their way a bit. These guys are competing in a place where their competitors and their peers are world class. They're going to be top of their game.
Yeah, certainly, and then you're looking at some offshore companies coming here as well, which is world-class companies as well, so it's going to be a very tough environment for them. I think a glimmer of hope is that First Accent clothing range of them. I think at the moment it's only making 5 or below 10% of revenue out for them, but I think that's probably one of the areas that they could concentrate a bit on, get those sales up. But at the moment, just on the retail side, I think they've fierce competition out there in South Africa. And I think these guys, its competitors, are going to have to cut prices as well, because we actually charging South African consumers, I think, way too much and too much high margins in our retailers at the moment. And the earnings on these retailers are probably going to normalise over time again.
And so for you, is HoldSport a hot stock or not?
No, certainly not.
Not hot. Oliver, you seem like a fit and healthy kind of chap. Look like a sports fanatic. How do you feel about HoldSport?
Yeah, thanks. I thought the camera put on 2 kilograms. Yeah, like I said, I think they got listed a bit top of the range. So I'd like to see what happens. What going forward. It's 6 months results. So, I think let's just wait and see. And then I think a lot of our retailers have run a bit too far at the moment. So I'm not hot on HoldSport at the moment.
Not hot for Oliver. Simon?
No, I think it's fairly priced, but I think to your point they're going to have a tough going forward. It's tough out there. Even if we don't slow down, there's unemployment. We're seeing it happening, discretionary spend and the like. Do you really need another set of golf clubs or whatever sports people buy? Not hot for me.
Are you going to change your mind if we win the Rugby World Cup in October?
You mean in the rip-off even more should with high prices? No, we'll
Still
get
not
back
hot?
to you. Let's win the World Cup first.
Gerbrand, give us your hot stock pick for today.
Yeah, I'm going to be boring again. I think last
you
2 or
picked it
3
last.
shows I picked Sasol. It hasn't performed well, so I'm picking it again. There's a 9 rand dividend here, a dividend in there as well. So I think about 335 words today. 325 rands, not too expensive. It's sitting at a PE below 10. Just the technology side and Sasol is where the attractiveness lies for us. I think it's a huge competitive advantage for them, just not only in South Africa but in the global space. We saw some, I don't think we must take it as negative news out of China that they're not going to do the coal to liquid plants, but I think the area that they're focusing on the last year, and they are looking at feasibility studies in the US, they bought nice shell gas operations in Canada as well, is the coal to liquid, and I think Uzbekistan or something, they're putting up a coal to liquid plant as well there together with the government. So that's seriously a huge growing potential for them going forward. With the currency where it's now, although the oil price has come down a little bit and it probably will come down a bit more, the currency will probably blow out a bit more then. They're making, I think for each 10-cent decline in the currency, they're making an extra 950 million rand on the income statement. So that's certainly something to look at.
Thank you, Gerbrand. Sasol was his hot stock pick. What about you, Oliver? What do you like?
I've gone with Metarex.
I think you picked that last time too.
Yeah,
For the same
we've
reason.
been boring together. Yeah, basically a pure corporate action play. Stocks trading at I think 7.98 we closed at. And the Chinese are coming to buy it at 8.90 rand. Obviously, there's a couple of reasons why the stock has come off. A lot of guys believe there's a big seller in a hedge fund who didn't hedge his currency exposure and has now pulled the stock lower. But you know, the Chinese seem to be very confident on the deal. Also, there's been some concerns with the recent Zambian government election results that came out. I think his name's Michael Sata. He actually came out and said, you know, he's pretty against the Chinese, but yeah, you know, trading at 7.80 and a
You're going to
close
get
at
8.90 in it.
Exactly.
Free money.
Thank you, Oliver, very much for your hot stock pick. Gentlemen, unfortunately, that's all we have time for today. That's it for Hot Stoxx. Thanks again to our guests, Gerbrand Smit from NEFG Fund Management and Oliver Russell from Global Trader. From me, Rifilo Sisiane, my co-host Simon Brown from Just One Lap. It's goodbye for now.